Hey guys, this is Mekkah. Welcome to part 2.5 of Fire Emblem Pitfalls, where I'm going to be clearing up some misconceptions that might have made their way into some people's minds due to AGDQ. This is just a quick video I'm making, letting me experiment with a different recording setup. It's not quite what you're used to. It's kind of scripted, but not really. Quick disclaimer, Kirby did a great job of making this run both fast and entertaining, and his couch did a good job of filling airtime with explanations to make it all more accessible. So if you haven't watched it yet, link is in the description, but I'm sure most people have seen it by now. But Fire Emblem is very menu heavy, very numbers heavy, so it can't have been easy to make it this fun to watch. And I know commentary is very hard to do, especially live. If I only use first takes for any commentary I've done, then they would sound even worse than they already do. But some of the things that were said were arguably wrong, and some are actually just plain wrong. No hate intended towards the runner or the couch. If I was there and I disagreed, I wouldn't even have said anything, since you don't want to make your friends look silly on stream. But I think they are errors worth correcting, so since this is Fire Emblem Pitfalls, I might as well do it. There were 3 things in there that stood out to me as factually wrong, and then 2 more that are a little more opinion based, but I think they're poor advice. So let's get the small ones out of the way first. So the first bit is about Fog of War. He's explaining what Fog of War does, so enjoy.
Sure. Fog of War is really annoying. Basically, with Fog of War, there's a big part of the map that you just can't see because of, it's foggy and it obstructs your vision. There are certain units that have an advantage here. Thieves, for instance, such as Matthew, have a really big vision range, so they're good at sort of unlocking the map. If you go on top of a mountain, you also are able to see pretty far away.
That's a really clever idea, standing on top of a mountain to get more vision, but it's not true. I wish it was true. It was actually a good idea, but unfortunately it's not. So I was going to disprove this by putting a unit on top of a mountain, but it turns out that there is no Fog of War map in Fire Emblem 7 that has these mountains, like this one, which is really strange. But I did the next best thing, and I put Hawkeye on this map. You can see 3 tiles to his right, and he's standing on a plane. So I'll move him on top of a peak, and there we go. He still has 3 tiles of vision. So peaks are like bigger mountains, and Hawkeye is like a bigger human. So if this doesn't increase your vision, then nothing does. Next one is about thief movement in the sand, and that should be around here somewhere. So he's explaining what desert terrain does.
Flying units, it heavily impedes their movement. There are 2 exceptions though. Thieves, who are nimble and sneaky and everything, and are able to walk around okay in the sand, and magic users, who are all mystical and whatnot, so the sand kind of moves for them.
Okay, so what he said here is partially true. Thieves are nimble and sneaky everything, and they can move a little further in the sand, but I think he's kind of mistaken on why that is. So as you can see, thieves like Matthew here have 3 movement in the sand, whereas these people, they all have 2. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. But the thing is, this is not because they are less impeded by the sand. If you check the terrain data on Serenus Forest, you can see that thieves, they are in the same class as like Lords and Swordmaster and a lot of other foot units. I think when it comes to desert terrain, this is where all the people like Archer and Mercenary are at, even though they're not listed. But if you scroll down, you can see the foot column is right here. And if you scroll down to desert, you can see that it costs them 2 movement to cross the desert tile. Now the reason that Matthew can move a little further than other units is because thieves have 6 movement, whereas these others, they all have 5. So they can pay the cost twice to get across the desert tile, whereas Matthew can pay it 3 times. Now, I think the guy was confused with some of the later games, like in Path of Radiance, thieves have full movement in the sand, and in Radiant Dawn they incur a penalty, but not as much as other foot units, so a bit of a mix-up there. Next one is about Weapon Triangle, and it happens all the way in the final chapter. This will do.
Funny enough, Anima contains the 3 elements, and they have their own triangle within the triangle.
But the thing is, like, you're not.
Okay, so I think he has been playing a bit of FE4, FE5 lately, because I mean, anima, the tomes, they are based on these elements like fire, thunder, and wind, like in the old games. In the old games they did have the triangle, but in FE7 they obviously don't. They all belong to anima. So much for the easy fixes. Now the more opinionated stuff. This is things I am a bit more passionate about. Try to nip these in the butt wherever I can. And this first part is about pre-promotes. I really want to find the right timestamp here. There we go. So he's explaining pre-promotes to the audience.
Class. However, some units are pre-promoted. That means you get them and they're already promoted. Now, the benefit of this is that they come in stronger than the pre-promoted units. The downside is that they can kind of hog up experience, and typically they have really bad growths. They're kind of a beginner trap, because if you use them too much, you get kind of screwed later on.
But if you know how to use them properly, they can really just beat the game for you pretty much. Oh.
I'm very glad that they kind of corrected him on the pre-promote thing, like Marcus, because the Fire Emblem veterans of the community, they have been trying so hard to get people to actually utilize their pre-promotes. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, like explaining it in detail, because I already did so in Pitfalls Part 1. But the hogging experience mentality is so wrong and so persistent in the community. It is kind of true that if you're a new player and you feed every single kill to Marcus and then everyone else falls behind or dies, then you might have some trouble to finish the game. But like even in this game, there are so many good pre-promotes that that's not even true. But it makes the game a bit harder, I guess. But people take it to such an extreme. They're like, well, I shouldn't use pre-promotes because they make my other units fall behind. Whereas really it's the player who is in control. You just don't make your pre-promote do everything, but feel free to use them like a normal unit or a little more because they are so broken and so powerful. So just don't overuse them, but they're not worse just because they're better. Last one is about Kent and Sane, around here somewhere.
This kind of pick, I mean, when you're playing Fire Emblem, you kind of have to pick and choose which units you really want to level up. Usually people pick one of the Cavaliers, either Sane or Kent. So you could technically use both, but what's the fun in that? Which one did you get?
What's the point in that? Well, Kent, Sane, and Lowen, the Cavaliers, are not like Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. You can actually pick multiple, and you should. There is no NPC guarding a gate somewhere saying, hey man, you've got 3 Cavaliers, come back when you've ditched 2. If you're already using Kent, then Sane is still an excellent unit, much better than most other units in the game, especially foot units like Will, Dorcas, Guy, and so on. I would much rather use Kent and Sane than Kent and Will. Now the only real argument against using both is the Night Crest. You get one in Chapter 17 Hector mode, and then the next one is kind of late in Chapter 22, but a Cavalier that promotes in Chapter 22 is still much better than an Archer who promotes earlier. There's also the option of promoting one of your Cavaliers in Lin hard mode using Wallace's Night Crest, and there's also an Earth Seal in Chapter 25 that you can use, or Chapter 26, but either way, it's nothing to worry about. Now, these 5 things are actually all the nitpicking that I've got for the AGDQ commentary. Everything else was pretty good. Just wanted to correct these few things. But other than that, they did a great job. So thank you for watching, and I hope you've learned something.